What if fear wasn't the enemy, but the gateway? What if everything you've ever wanted, confidence, clarity, connection, was just on the other side of it? You've probably felt it before, that tightening in your chest before you speak up, the hesitation before taking a leap, the voice in your head whispering, what if I fail? It shows up in the most critical moments, when we're about to ask for more, step into the unknown, or choose ourselves. And so often we freeze, not because we're incapable, but because fear convinces us we are. Doesn't matter how talented you are, how much potential you hold, or how badly you want to change your life. If fear runs the show, it will keep you stuck in what's familiar, even if familiar is painful. That's the trick of fear. It disguises itself as protection when really it's limitation. We live smaller, speak softer, and settle for less, all in the name of being safe. But what if fear is simply unclaimed energy? What if that same pulse of anxiety could become adrenaline for action, courage in disguise? What if your greatest breakthroughs are waiting behind the walls fear helped you build? Most people wait. They wait for fear to go away, for the timing to be right, for the confidence to come. But the truth is, confidence doesn't precede action, it follows it. You don't get to feel fearless before you leap. You leap, and in the air, you become someone new. Deep down, you know there's more for you. You feel it in the tension between where you are and where you could be. That tension, that's not a sign to pull back. It's a signal to move forward. Fear isn't a stop sign, it's a starting line. Fear is one of the most powerful forces shaping human behavior. It influences the decisions we make, the risks we avoid, the opportunities we pass up, and the relationships we never fully lean into. It hides beneath the surface, often unnoticed, but ever present, guiding us quietly away from discomfort, pushing us towards safety, even when that safety is slowly suffocating our potential. It's easy to think fear only shows up in dramatic moments, like standing on a stage, quitting a job, or moving across the world, but more often fear is subtle. It shows up in hesitation, in procrastination, in the excuses we make and the dreams we quietly let go of. Many people believe that fear is something to conquer, something to eliminate before we can move forward. But fear isn't something that disappears with time or success. It's a constant companion, especially when you're pushing boundaries or chasing something meaningful. The real shift happens not when you try to get rid of fear, but when you learn to relate to it differently. Fear becomes less of a threat and more of a teacher. It becomes a mirror reflecting the areas where we still have room to grow, to heal, to expand. There's a massive difference between living a life controlled by fear and living a life informed by it. In one, fear dictates every choice. You stay small, stay safe, and avoid pain at all costs. And in the other, fear becomes an invitation, a signpost that says, here lies your next level. When we shift our mindset from resisting fear to working with it, something incredible happens. We begin to reclaim our power. We start choosing courage over comfort. We stop waiting for the fear to go away and begin moving with it. Every person reaches a moment when they must choose. Stay in the familiar discomfort of fear, or risk stepping into the unknown for the possibility of freedom. That moment is not reserved for the few, it comes for everyone. The difference between those who break through and those who stay stuck isn't talent, timing, or luck. It's willingness. A willingness to look fear in the eye and move anyway. That's where transformation begins, not in the absence of fear, but in the decision to no longer let it lead. This is the journey from fear to freedom. Fear has a way of weaving itself into the fabric of our everyday lives. It doesn't always shout, it whispers. It convinces us to play it safe, to wait for the perfect moment, to hold back our voice, our ideas, our truth. The challenge is that fear is not always obvious. It disguises itself as logic, as responsibility, as careful planning. It wears the mask of just being realistic. And in doing so, it convinces us that settling is smart and that comfort is success. For many, fear manifests as the inner critic, the voice that says, you're not ready, you're not good enough, or who do you think you are? It's that subtle but persistent presence that second guesses every move, overanalyzes every risk, and magnifies every flaw. The problem isn't just that fear exists, it always will. The real challenge is how silently it governs the choices we make and how easily it becomes our norm. Fear limits not only our actions, but also our identity. Over time, when we make decisions based on what we're afraid of instead of what we desire, we begin to shrink, our goals get smaller, our dreams get postponed, we start identifying with the version of ourselves that doubts, avoids, and compromises. It becomes a loop. Fear leads to inaction, inaction leads to regret, and regret reinforces fear. The biggest tragedy is that most people aren't even aware of how much fear is running the show. They assume their limitations are facts instead of patterns. They tell themselves stories like, I'm just not a risk taker, or this is just the way life is, never realizing that fear is the author of those narratives. Left unchecked, fear steals time, it steals joy, growth, and possibility. The real challenge lies in the illusion that fear is protecting us. It tells us, don't speak up, you might be judged. Don't try, you might fail. Don't dream, you might be disappointed. And while these statements feel protective, they actually create a cage, one that becomes more comfortable the longer we stay in it. What makes fear so difficult to confront is that it feels rational. But logic alone doesn't build a meaningful life. The challenge, then, is not simply to face fear, but to recognize how it operates, how it influences, and how it can be transformed. Because until we do, we remain prisoners of something we were never meant to serve. The journey from fear to freedom begins with awareness. Not the kind of awareness that simply notices fear exists, but the deeper recognition of how it shapes thoughts, behaviors, and ultimately our lives. Fear thrives in unconscious patterns. It grows in silence, in avoidance, in the spaces where we haven't questioned our beliefs. The first step in transforming fear is to bring it into the light. Name it, understand it, and get curious about where it comes from and what it's trying to protect. When people begin to explore their fear, they often discover it's rooted in past experiences, moments of rejection, failure, shame, or loss. These emotional imprints become mental shortcuts, warning systems that scream danger, even when the present moment offers a new opportunity. That's why fear feels so powerful. It draws strength from old wounds. But those wounds don't have to define us. When we challenge the assumptions we've made about ourselves based on fear, like I'm not good enough, or I was mess things up, we begin to loosen its grip. Another key to shifting out of fear is recognizing the power of state. Our emotional and physical states influence how we perceive situations. A tired, stressed, or tense body is more likely to default to fear-based reactions. But when we intentionally shift our physiology through movement, breath, posture, or focus, we change our internal chemistry. This creates space for courage, clarity, and creativity to emerge. In this space, fear loses its edge, and we can make decisions from a place of strength instead of survival. Equally important is vision. Fear thrives in the absence of purpose. When we don't know what we're moving toward, we become hyper-focused on what we're trying to avoid. But when we create a compelling vision, one that excites and stretches us, we tap into a different energy. The pull of a meaningful future can become stronger than the push of fear, and with each small act of courage, confidence begins to grow. Transformation doesn't come from eliminating fear. It comes from choosing action in its presence. It comes from shifting the question from what if I fail to what if I succeed. from what could go wrong to what could open up for me. As we build the habit of moving toward what scares us, we reclaim power that fear once borrowed, and that power becomes the foundation for lasting change. There comes a moment in every journey when the internal tension becomes too loud to ignore. It's the point where staying the same feels more painful than taking the risk to change. This is not a loud cinematic breakthrough. Often it's quiet, personal, raw. It's the realization that fear has been in control for far too long and that something has to give. This moment doesn't wait for ideal conditions. It arrives when you least expect it, during a difficult conversation, a moment of solitude, or in the middle of another night spent replaying the same regrets. And in that moment, there's a choice. One story stands out. A woman who had been silent for years about her dream of writing finally stood up and said the words out loud, "I'm afraid no one will care what I have to say." Her voice trembled, her eyes filled, but something powerful was happening. She wasn't running anymore. She was naming the fear, not as a weakness, but as a truth. In doing so, she took back her power. That moment of truth became her turning point, not because the fear vanished, but because she stopped hiding from it. She gave herself permission to be seen, not just in her strength, but in her vulnerability. That's the essence of the key moment. It's not when fear disappears. It's when you stop letting it dictate the terms of your life. It's when you realize courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to move anyway. It's the first time you say yes to yourself, despite the shaking hands or pounding heart. And it's in that yes, that tiny act of rebellion against your old limitations, that everything begins to shift. People often wait for external change, a new job, a new relationship, a sign, but the real shift is internal. It's when you finally trust yourself enough to take the next step without certainty. It's when you understand that fear can come with you, but it no longer gets to drive. A key moment is a quiet revolution, a flicker of truth that says, "I'm done living small." And from that spark, a fire begins to grow, a fire that lights the path forward, not without fear, but beyond it. The journey from fear to freedom is not a straight line. It's a winding path full of hesitation, doubt, resistance, and breakthrough. Along the way, there will be moments where it feels easier to turn back, to retreat into the comfort of the familiar, but growth lives in the unknown. And every step forward, no matter how uncertain, is a declaration that fear will not be the one writing the story. At its core, fear is a signal. It points to something meaningful. It reveals where we care, where we long for more, where something inside us wants to grow. The mistake is thinking that fear means stop. In reality, it often means go. It means pay attention. It means step in, not away. When we reframe fear from something that blocks us to something that guides us, we begin to reclaim our relationship with ourselves. We no longer see discomfort as a threat, but as a threshold to deeper authenticity, greater courage, and untapped potential. The truth is, no one is immune to fear. It visits everyone. But the people who create powerful, fulfilling lives are not the ones who have no fear. They're the ones who've learned to dance with it. They've decided that the price of staying stuck is too high, and the reward of freedom is worth the risk. They've chosen to take action not because they're fearless, but because their purpose is greater than their doubt. Right? This isn't about erasing fear from your life. It's about building a life where fear no longer has the final word. It's about showing up anyway. Messy, unsure, but committed. It's about choosing yourself even when your voice shakes, because every time you do, you strengthen the part of you that's free, the part that dreams, creates, and leads. That version of you is already inside. You just have to give it more room to breathe. So let fear come. Let it speak. But don't let it decide. Your freedom begins the moment you stop waiting for the fear to go away and start moving forward anyway, step by step, choice by choice. This is how freedom is built. Not in the absence of fear, but in the presence of courage. Now is the time to make a choice. Not tomorrow, not when things settle down, not when you feel more confident or more prepared. Now. Because the truth is, waiting won't make fear disappear. It only makes the cost of inaction grow heavier. Your next level, your breakthrough, your freedom, it all begins with a single step, a decision to no longer let fear dictate what you can or cannot do. Look at your life honestly. Where has fear been calling the shots? Is it in the career you've hesitated to pursue, the conversation you've avoided, the project you've kept tucked away in the safety of someday? You already know where fear lives. You've felt it in your hesitation, in the dreams you quietly shelved, in the parts of yourself you've been too afraid to share. The invitation now is simple. Stop hiding. Stop shrinking. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. It will never come. You create the moment by moving. Take one step. Just one. Maybe that's sending the message, speaking the truth, signing up for the class, sharing your work, whatever your fear has been holding hostage. Reclaim it. Piece by piece. Small actions build momentum. And with every move you make, you weaken the hold fear has had over your life. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to be now. Because the longer you wait, the further you drift from the life that's truly meant for you. You don't have to know the whole path. You just have to be brave enough to take the next step in the dark. Trust that something greater is waiting on the other side. This is your turning point. Let fear come, but don't let it lead. Choose freedom. Choose growth. Choose to act. Not someday, today.